extorting money from you for not doing some moves. What I have here is... How much not to open this book?
Oh, it's going to be worth a quid to keep it open, I bet.
How for the first line, anyway?
Hang on, Fiona. You ordered food. Breakfast?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Fiona.
£2 I'm not seeing you go that ready, you.
Time to read what you're reading.
Go on, get on. So let's go through it by Guy and Smith, was it?
Sam is paying £1 to read out what you
£2 not to.
Oh, God.
£1.50 to read it.
This is only the second.
Right, we're reading.
I think we've got going to put another 150 into whatever one.
So it's £2.50 to read. And £2 not to read.
3 not to.
Oh, for God's sake.
I hate Shatner.
So do I, but I don't want to hear it.
Well, we need some more money.
Another £1 to read it.
Okay.
And another 50p to read it.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
No, but I think we're reading. We're reading.
The killer was carrying 2 weapons. One was a stun gun. Shall I go over that again?
You don't have to.
For the hard of understanding, with subtitles. Was carrying 2 weapons. One was a stun gun. Right. The other a las gun, but I think the idea of a killer carrying a stun gun is...
It's to stop him moving so he can do the job properly.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Now we have some absolutely wonderful guy.
What's this worth? £5 or what?
This is...
Bats.
Bats out of hell. They'll be gone when the morning comes.
£2 for the rest of the song.
I didn't know she was going to do this.
You said yes. You should have known. They know what I'm like.
Oh, yeah.
It was exactly a week after the funeral that Walter Williams began to feel unwell. For a time he told nobody, assuming that it was just tiredness caused by a combination of grief and sleepless nights that to stop her to keep going. Stop it.
Oh, come on. Right, if you want to hear more, some more money.
Okay, how to carry on?
Hey, life had to go on. Although the summons he received from the police for allowing the horses to wander on the road.
What is this guy on? Can I have some, please?
It didn't make him feel any better anyway. What's up? Gladys regarded him through red-rimmed eyes. What are you opening your head for, Walter?
I think I'm going to be sick.
Walter replied.
I haven't had enough coffee for this.
So, keep going.
Oh no. If you pay £2 to stop, I'll give you another £5.
Hey.
Oh no, I think
Where are we up to?
I'll have the 5.
I think I've already seen Walter replied. I'd only just made it to the bathroom in time. It was the thought of the autopsy, the dissecting and stitching of a pretty innocent little girl. The final analysis, the moment of truth. Walter was still heaving when he came back into the room. He was sweating too and shivering at the same time. The light seemed to have dimmed. Gladys was in shadow and he could not discern her features. You ought to go to bed, she said. He looked at her, knew she was speaking to him, but he couldn't hear her words. You You what? He forced the words out, but whether there was any sound he didn't know. Walter, you're ill! His comprehension faded. He sensed himself at a disadvantage.
He's stuck in this bloody book.
His back and neck muscles were agony. This woman, he didn't know who she was, was advancing on him, hands outstretched. She was an enemy. He had to defend himself, and the best way to do that was to attack. He stumbled towards her.
You've got £4 to stop them.
£4 to stop. So if anybody says 5 next time, we're talking about pounds. I think you killed that one then.
Thank goodness.
We should give them a break. People remember last year's turkey reading will remember the City Sleuth. That was the one with the man with the hat. This is another one in that stunning series of books. In a sort of no. This is the one with the Satanist coven and black masses.
A lone crusader against the evil of black magic with interesting symbols drawn on the front cover by somebody's biro. Phil! Suddenly her tone was very serious and even more guarded. I'm a newspaper woman. I know a lot about you. I'm not an idiot who can't read between the lines. I know what goes on in the world. I hear things too.
Oh, well.
They lock you away from us.
Like the Fletcherville werewolf story, Port Elizabeth, and that voodoo cult werewolf story, Exorcist, Tale of Thing from Cape Cod. John doesn't know what she's talking about. I know there's somebody running around trying to stamp out the devil all over the globe. A man who comes...
He's running around stamping.
And you say the man.
A man who comes and goes like a ghost, doing all his good deeds and then taking a powder. Nobody knows. This is good smart. Nobody knows who he is, what he is, or why he's doing it, including him.
Don't sense a word.
It's time to read the werewolf headline again.
The werewolf headline.
Yeah, what's trying to describe the werewolf thing? Julie, what's it?
I know what goes on in the world. I hear things too. Like the Fletcherville werewolf story, and Port Elizabeth, and that voodoo cult werewolf story, Exorcist, Tale from Cape Cod thing.
Well, she's a journalist.
Yeah.
What for? The Daphne.
I shall continue from where I was. I can think of only one person good enough to do all those things. One person with the background, the money necessary for such unpaid-for adventures. Why did he pay for unpaid adventures? A man who saw his own wife killed by cultists and lived on to do something about that too. And then kept on doing it. A guy like you who had done it all, mountain climbing, exploring, daredevil stuff.
How to carry on?
The whole bit.
We're even here.
Another 50 pence and stop.
150 to stop,
No,
1
the
to carry
pound
on.
carry on.
Eh?
The pound carry on.
Okay, carry on's having by 50p at the moment. Okay.
Still in St. George, if you're not the mystery man everybody calls the Satan sleuth, then I'm not in this room. You're in Tibet. And Catherine Copley is a leftover from Barnum and Bailey's, which she isn't. God help us all.
Yes.
Philip St. George did not reply immediately. His own bronzed face was impassive, only his striking eyes glinting, searchingly. When is the next meeting of the coven?
Another 60p in the stop.
Come on,
60p to stop.
pound carry on.
Yeah. How to carry on, so the carry on Okay.
Another 50 to carry on.
You count.
That's the carry-on.
I think the carry-ons have it just slightly. Yeah. Right, the carry-ons pay.
Norma Carlson shivered visibly, her shapely shoulders shook. Her shapely shoulders shook. Even he
A pound to stop.
Norma Carlson shivered visibly, her shapely
Hang on,
shoulders
excuse me.
shook.
There was just money paid to repeat that line again. So, yeah, but we didn't hear it. I didn't hear it.
Norma Carlson shivered visibly, her shapely shoulders shook.
There you go. Yay! Okay, we had a bit to stop. How much was it? A pound to stop.
It actually gets worse.
If it
So
gets
it's
worse,
one
I'll
each.
another carrot, carry on.
So we've got £2 to carry on.
One to stop.
The 150 to stop.
£2.50 to stop, 2 to carry on.
70p carry on.
Oh,
I'll have another 30 to make it an even quid there between us, something. Another 50 carry on.
okay.
Pound to stop.
So £3 to carry on.
It's each. I think we're even
No,
here.
350 to stop, I think now, isn't it?
Okay.
Or another quid to carry on then.
50p to carry on in a per head. So if we want to have some more, we need to see more than 50p.
So, 150.
I'm lost now, we're carrying on, don't think.
Yeah, we're carrying on. We're carrying on.
I think
Carry
the
on.
money to get at least a page.
Carry on.
At least a page.
Okay.
At least a page.
Even telling you is a sin, a crime against the circle of truth. But you are going to tell me, aren't you? Yes, of course. This person likes their S's, I have to say. She nodded rapidly as if speed would solve the dilemma of indecision to rebel against Satan, the forces of darkness and Sister Sorrow. It's a penthouse again as usual, and that's located later when he would look back and try to remember exactly what had happened at the precise moment when Norma Carlson was telling him about the meeting. Even Philip St. George would be hard-pressed to explain what occurred. Not only what had happened, the incident itself, but in fact the true order and sequence of the events which had sifted so alarmingly. Memory and vision regulated as they are by the mind of the person who is eyewitness to tragedy and startling phenomenon can never be wholly accurate and reliable. Not even when the observer is a Philip St. George who has seen more things in this life than most men will in a century of living. Always has that been so. Never more so than now.
I'm losing the will to live here.
Stop. That's £2 to stop. £2 to
He
stop.
can't remember what happened to the woman.
Yeah, I'm not
So you could say, oh, 50 quid.
Right, we've got £2 to stop.
You need to drop the manuscript on the way to the publisher.
We have £2 to stop.
We've won that one, haven't we? Something new, please.
We'll have something practical. Because, as we all know, people who don't know about science fiction always think we were into UFOs and things. I brought this on the Stranger's Use file. Just read back and see how much I can remember. Would you believe in swamp gas? What? Swamp gas. Gas. If it followed your car down a twisty country road, if it hovered over your home for nearly an hour, creating intolerable temperatures and visiting a tingling sensation of the
Yeah, I could say that. I didn't use that very spelling anymore.
You found your skin blistered with strange, well-like burns. Would you believe weather balloons, ball lightning, the planet Venus? Well, actually, does anyone think the planet Venus actually flies?
Sorry.
Would you believe?
Did you believe what?
Would you believe the planet Venus astronaut who photographed a UFO whilst orbiting in a manned spaceflight. Not if you were the 9-year-old Brazilian girl who watched a saucer sink suddenly into a boiling river.
And it'd been a plate, then I would have believed it. But a saucer, no.
Do you think only cranks, cooks, and cultists cite flying saucers or accept the possibility that they originate on other planets? Which is not true, because we all know that they in fact come from Antarctica, because that's where the Nazis built them. Everybody knows that. Do you know that the number? Do you know that the number includes the German scientist who is the world's foremost authority on space travel and heads America's own Jupiter space program? Did you know that U.S. Air Force Regulation 200-2 states that UFOs are a serious business?
Look out.
We have a pound to stop.
50 feet stop.
Pound 50 to stop.
2 pounds of toasted on one of the fires.
No. Well, we have a pound 50 to stop.
That's exactly.
Anybody would like to hear some more of this literary marvel?
2 pounds actually open it.
2 pounds to open the book.
That's going to be the cheapest 2 pounds.
Yeah, 2 pounds, please.
Perhaps a strange.
Hang on.
Hang on.
Didn't say read any of it, just said open it.
He said to open it, he didn't say anything about reading.
You've got 50p to read the paragraph.
We already had a
Pound 50 to stop.
Yeah, that's enough.
Then it's £2 to open 50 on top to read it, so that big stuff.
together, but it's 2 different things, really, isn't it?
It's 2 pounds to stop reading the back cover. Stop reading the back cover.
Okay.
I got into the book.
Okay.
You're writing the plot for the next book,
Perhaps the strangest story of all was that told by a Waynesboro, Virginia man who described a scene right out of a science fiction story. While chopping some wood at the August archery range at Brand's Flat on Tuesday, January 19th, 1965, he noticed 2 bright objects in the sky above him. One was smaller than the other and proceeded to settle on the ground not more than 50 feet from him. The man, open brackets, who wished to remain unidentified, close brackets, watched open-mouthed as an aperture appeared in what had seemed to be a completely smooth surface. Then 3 figures appeared and walked a few feet towards him. They appeared to be miniature humans with a reddish hue to their skin and eyes that seemed to drill, with a reddish hue to their skin, and eyes that seemed to drill holes in him. The entire procedure had occurred with very little sound until the visitors made some unintelligible attempts at verbalization, just like the writers of this book. Still holding the axe in his hand, the man stood transfixed, staring at the strange beings and the craft they had come in. Finally, the midget spaceman decided to leave, walked back into the ship, and resealed the entrance. Probably because there was a midnight with a bloody axe. Because there's a bloody mad axe. After the incident, the man wrote a description of the account and mailed it to himself, vowing to open it only if further sightings occurred. When reports of UFOs continued, the man revealed what he had seen. Is he an expert? I think probably assume that.
Do we really have to find out? Okay. 50p to stop.
50p stop.
Pound to stop. We have a pound to stop.
Pound 50 to find another eyewitness.
his squad car towards the small town on the night of June 12, 1964, when he did a double take, noticing a brilliant light off the side of State Route 51. He pulled the car off the side of the road to get a good look at the object. His first thought that it was an airplane or helicopter he had immediately rejected, for the object was too bright and had an aura around it that extended for what he estimated to be a quarter of a mile in either direction. Okay, let's not bother which direction that was. As he watched, Chief Crawford became aware of a deathly silence that hung in the air. The sky overhead was clear, and the stars twinkled their way through the atmosphere through his eyes.
Could you read that bit again, 50p? I didn't get it.
The sky overhead was clear, and the stars twinkled their way through the atmosphere through his eyes. That wasn't smart. Not the slightest wind moved the leaves on the nearby tree. Crawford figured that he would be able to hear the sound of any conventional engine for miles. Yet, the object, which appeared to be less than a mile away, made absolutely no sound. Thinking that what he was looking at was perhaps an illuminated blimp, Crawford switched on his spotlight and aimed it at the light in the sky.
Stop.
Thinking that what he was looking at was perhaps an illuminated blimp, Crawford switched on his spotlight and aimed it at the light in the sky. The object, which had been blinking in the sky over Elmore, moved slightly and then began glowing steadily. Wondering whether or not the thing had responded to his light, Chief Crawford blinked the spot twice. Immediately afterwards, the object itself blinked twice. Then the scene went black. Crawford watched the area for another 5 minutes, but the object did not show itself again. Yes, we have the population. Oh, it's near Toledo as well. Elmore, a town with a population of 600, is located about 20 miles southwest of Toledo. Nothing like the bright light and accompanying aura had ever visited the little town before. Lucky Ohio. Still puzzling over what he had observed in the sky, the chief continued his nightly duties.
Quick to stop, it's got Americans in it and I don't like it.
Alright, we have a pound to stop.
Another 50p to stop.
Pound 50 to stop.
£2 go.
How much?
£2.
Right. If you want this to stop, you need 50p plus.
Another pound to stop. I don't give a shit what happens to the cheap police.
Then you swaps have it by 50p.
Another story, it's usually anal probing somewhere along the line.
It's by the unsolved mysteries.
Alright, carry on to have it by 10p.
Another 20p take your lead. Another 20p. Stop.
Another pence to stop.
I think it stops. Right, whoever bid to stop, can I have your money please, guys?
However, 50p just to read that one line.
This is chapter 22, Footprints and Footnotes in Florida. James W. Flynn, a well-known dog trainer and highly respected resident of Fort Myers, Florida, was running some of his hounds through the swampy Everglades after dark on a mild March night in 1965.
Some of his hands.
Obviously being a well-known dog trainer and highly respected resident of nature, an expert.
Dog hand.
And now we have some idiots.
Vicky and Dawn, an action-packed series featuring Billy, fearless master of the jungle, and have been told to read the footnotes as well.
Hooray!
Yay!
We've got a pound for now.
No,
Yes.
we've got £1.50 not to actually start reading this book.
Two pounds, I've never heard one before.
You'll never want to
You never want to do this.
How to read it.
So £3 to read, £1.50 to stop.
Okay. £3 to read this. 150 and 9. I think we're reading. I'm taking the money. Okay.
Right, you're going to regret this, but footnotes and all, here it comes. By birth and upbringing, even more than Brindukey, Dawn was ideally situated to the primitive environment of Silikian and the part she was playing in their quest for food. Although she was not directly descended from Lord Greystoke, footnote, being unable to care for his younger brother adequately after the deaths of their parents, Captain Hugh Bulldog Drummond, QB, accepted Lord and Lady Greystoke's suggestion that they adopt John. As a result, the boy became known as Drummond Clayton, the latter being the Greystokes' family name. Now we've got that sorted. So she wasn't directly descended from Lord Greystoke. Her paternal grandparents, Sir John and Lady Miriam Drummond Clayton, had acquired a knowledge of jungle survival second only to his. Footnote. How this came about is told in The Son of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. However, at Lord Greystoke's request, ERB did not reveal John Drummond Clayton. Permission now having been granted, the situation has been clarified by fictional genealogist Philip Hussey Farmer in his biographical work Tarzan Alive.
£5 as an apology.
As the exploits of Sir John's elder brother, Captain Hugh Bulldog Drummond, proved, 2 stars to other people. The history of Captain Hugh Bulldog Drummond is recorded in the books of H.C. Sapper Melville and Gerald Fairley. They were instructed to avoid making any reference to the captain's younger brother so that his enemies would not learn of the boy's whereabouts.
I still pay £5 as an apology. I'll never make that mistake again.
She sprang from the stock, noted for a love of adventure and great courage in the face of personal danger. That had certainly been the case of her parents, Arnold, John and Hazel Drummond Clayton. They had been espionage agents in German-occupied Europe throughout much of World War II, doing useful work and living constantly under the shadow of a very, in italics, painful death if they could have been captured.
Right.
Until Dawn was transported to Silikian, circumstances that never required her to display her hereditary courage. For all that, as she had proved since her arrival, she had been well prepared, both mentally and physically, to do so when the need for it had arisen. Always something of a tomboy as a child, Dawn had insisted upon duplicating the lessons in self-defense and weapons handling that her, at the time, almost inseparable companion Brindukey had been receiving. What was more, she had gained considerable proficiency in them. Even during her formal and conventional education, she She had contrived to continue practicing much of what she had been taught. In addition, while attending routine,
Yeah, but she's trying to put a practical school.
another footnote. This is my favourite one. Although Armand John Drummond Clayton and his wife had served in the same resistance group as Miss Amelia Blenkinsop.
50p to start.
50p per title. M.A. B.Sc. Oxon. Honorary member of HOGA. Honorary Old Girls Association.
You thought I made that up.
I don't know why you're laughing, this is all true.
There's more, there's more.
No, I got it, but some of whom's exploits, not whom's exploits, are recorded in Blunt Genius by J.T. Ensign. One story.
For £2 to stop reading this footnote, and there is more of it.
Right, we have £2 to stop reading this
There's waffle
book.
cells and there is story.
So if you want to have the rest,
£2 the rest of the footnote.
so they're even.
They're even down.
So we need to carry on.
Carry on.
£3 to carry on and 2 to stop.
Okay,
carry on.
I must find out who the publisher is. I've got a shot.
Corgi. Oh boy.
It was written by a dog.
My dog knows more grammar than that.
That's insulting Kent, right?
Holloway Old Girls Association. Some of whose exploits are recorded in Blunt Genius by J.T. Ensign. They thought, buy more of my books, guys. Buy more of my books.
And if anyone ever finds a copy of Blonde Genius, I would really appreciate it.
That's how many books he's written. He actually got them all published.
It's just the ones in that series.
Their family background did entire raiment.
It was definitely about 15 when he wrote this.
No, 1976.
No, he was like 40 when he wrote it.
No, that was...
Which is point out, age was still 15. This costume has a padded costume. It's nothing to do with it.
Does it say whether the leopard skin priests were furry side in or out?
I think you can guess.
That's an exercise for the advanced student.
Surely there's a footnote.
No way them on a thing.
Kept short for convenience, and I'm not going to say, guess what that was? Kept short for convenience. Her tawny hair formed a curly halo around classically beautiful features, tanned to a rich golden bronze, like all the exposed portions of her body. Her face denoted breeding, self-reliance, and intelligence well above average. Enhancing rather than detracting from her femininity, power-packed muscles rippled underneath her smooth skin. Everything about her suggested that she could move with the fluid speed and precision of a trained athlete.
Come for a full shower.
Get the joke.
With the wonderful heading, it was the most deadly weed killer ever invented. strike. Thousands were already doomed to the terrible, lingering death. Thousands more would die in the ensuing pandemonium as the people panicked and the authorities declared martial law.
Found not to read it.
Sorry, what was that?
Found not to start reading it.
Okay.
Another pound not to.
That's not true.
70 not to.
You can shut off Franklin in an instant because it's
50 you said?
already.
£2.70 not to start the book.
It's a very good decision. You're still alive. Very quiet.
I think
You notice not in my list of guilty pleasures, or you take you reading this.
right. If anybody wants to hear this, we need some money, folks.
You're not gonna get it.
Make sure I've got
Not
another
the
pound
pasteurised
to stop it.
Right.
Right, and now we have a new author, David James, Croc, in the tradition of Knight of the Crafts. We got both of them.
Have you?
Stapleton, this is about crocodiles in New York sewers, by the way.
50 pages dedicated to Steve Irwin.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Whatever.
Stapleton shined his powerful flashlight down the tunnel, where he picked out the access ledge just above the waterline. Everything was just as Andrea Frascati had said it would be. He doubted seriously whether she had been down here, so that meant Boggs, or someone had told her at least this much. He worked his way down the pile of rubble to the water's edge, stepped up on the 18-inch wide ledge, and started down the tunnel. It was difficult walking along the narrow ledge because the tunnel walls curved up and inward, and while the shotgun in his right hand threw him somewhat off balance. He worked his way along the ledge for a while, finally reaching the second cave-in. This was one Andrea Frascati had not mentioned, and at first he thought it might have happened recently. But then he shined his light to the opposite wall of the tunnel, where he could see silt and dirt had run down and accumulated from the collapsed cross-flow tube. It looked like the smaller tube had been collapsed for a number of years. If Boggs had remained in the tunnel and had not returned to the street when Andrea left, as Wickery said he probably had, then he would have had to come this way.
Stop, not find something.
So we have a pound to start?
I'll give you £2 if I can read it as Steve Irwin.
I'll have another 50p to that one.
Right, go on then.
I think it's that as well. 3 quid married to him, Steve Irwin.
Go on.
Don't worry, we're very lame Steve Irwin impression.
At least we'll have a sting in the tail.
Oh!
Yes.
Got into trouble because they've been shaken having a party. Steve Irwin turns up, still with the stingray in his chest. And Satan says, that's in really poor taste.
Well, a football cop in a
I am Steve Irwin, leave me alone.
Wasn't that his own furnace?
There was a research page which had the BBC 24 logo, and it says, World African Subterranean Control deny all responsibility.
Somebody else starts another book.
Yeah.
We're starting another book and she's going to find a bit of some crocs in it.
The whole thing is cross.
Right, what's
This is the 5th book in an exciting new adventure series.
And how much will I be paid to tell us you really wrote those? The author of...
Richard Kirk.
You mean Robert Goldingbock?
Oh.
I'll put in £2 for that.
Um,
Bundle of certainly obstacle.
I'll be along in a moment.
Robert Goldstock actually wrote those books, and he's been going around ever since trying to buy up every copy.
They can't miss that. Sunday awful. Some of the some bad sections have been dark over.
Oh, okay.
Are we on?
Yes, sure, go on.
It starts with, you know how some books have quotes at the beginning of each chapter? This is one of them. In the gale's teeth, the wise sailor will tack his vessels, else the elements destroy him. Sea reavers darling.
There's a lot of knowledge, because you're running for the wind, you don't attack.
You tack, you broach, you capsize.
Maybe that's just what they tell news service.
Exactly. There's one over here. If you have no map, then you must seek a landmark. The wise traveller is never truly lost. Someone tell that to my husband.
God says I am here.
And I'm sure he's not asking for instructions how to get somewhere, right?
Yeah, never.
It's a man of thing.
Tom, in the Atlantic.
Okay, here we go. Ready for this?
Okay.
The creature feasted well that night, bloodlust driving it on long after its appetite was satisfied. It ventured deeper into the city than the time before, spurred by some primeval compulsion, leaving behind a trail of carnage that was not fully realised until full light. Emboldened by its success, the thing wandered several pli into Haral, approaching close to the centre. There it found the lights and the noise and the crowd too threatening, and drifted back into the shadows of the peripheral alleyways. It moved swiftly, very quietly, its silent passage punctuated by the screams of the dying. As night grew old and dawn threatened, it moved back towards the hiding place. When the final tally was taken, it was discovered that 11 souls had gone to meet whatever gods they worshipped, and panic once again gripped Haral. Din Takel called in all his men and set them to search in every empty building, each cellar and catacomb that might hide anything. The Guardian could no more set a name on the slaughterer than he could describe it. He did what he could. Patrols checked the taverns and inns, attempting to establish some census of visitors. Sea reavers from Crag and Trithen from the northern kingdoms were questioned in particular, for they were known at times to run amok. A difficult situation arose when Takel insisted in searching the Jeddah's palace, not the Jedi. The Jeddah. For fear the rumours of beatsmen were accurate. Some British swap group, obviously.
So this is searching the tavern.
Yeah, just search the tavern. Real nonsense one, yeah.
Down there. Can't see anything from the door here.
Yes, that's the one. Funnily enough, they didn't find anybody. You know, there were no beatsmen there, and the Jedi promised to launch a formal protest. But Yoda was fine. Neither the Guardian nor the Council were concerned. They sought only to end the new horror.
No, the Guardian is always concerned.
Once more, the celebration of the summer gathering became dulled by fear. It was less the fact of death than the manner and quantity in which it came, that and the unknown source. Men died at each gathering, some women too, but they fell to sword or knife, to bare hands or war axe, from falls or drowning or drink. The hideously mutilated corpses discovered by the patrols seemed to have fallen victim to ravening beasts. Yet there was no sign of maddened animals or the confines of Haral's wall. The creature slept through the day, its vestigial mind lit by dim dreams of blood and soft, rending flesh. You need a Scottish accent to say that properly. It woke again as night clamped fear over the city. It was hungry.
£2 to stop.
Thank you. Any plans on your mind?
No?
Yeah, that's silence, that one.
Okay.
Thank you, Maddie.
You're welcome.
I'm still having crocodile issues. So. This is Jan of the Jungle. Jan of the George. Like Philip's Albert.
Although she did say I was quite sick when I picked the bell I was going to read. Okay. Right, it's chapter 8, and the title is Orgy. Well, I'm actually going to skip the first 5 pages and go straight to the final paragraph of this chapter. Jan clutched at the long shaft, wet with his own blood, and broke it off. Gritting his teeth that he might silently bear the pain. Then he reached behind him for that part which had gone through his flesh.
It is the anal probe.
And jerked it out. But the pain and loss of blood were too great. A giddiness assailed him and he sank limply to the ground. That was the only bit I could find to actually do with the actual orgy, really. Shall I move on to another book, or would you like to hear more of this one? It's a classic, alright, so go and carry on with this. It's a classic. Bono and Chigna did not rest very long on the beach. By the time they were dry from their ocean bath, the rays of the sun had grown intolerable.
The start of the chapter marked orgy, by the way.
Yes. It is.
Lots of tenses, I think.
The ape got up first. There's an ape involved. And began sniffing the air as if some far-off scent had attracted her attention. Then she shuffled away in the direction of the jungle. The big Negro, who was wise in the ways of wild things, observed her actions and followed her. He found her in a small patch of wild pineapples. He found her in a small patch of wild pineapples. Devouring one of the fragrant fruits. The big Negro, who was wise in the ways of wild things, observed her actions and followed her. He found her in a small patch of wild pineapples, devouring one of the fragrant fruits. Selecting a ripe one for himself, he drew his machete and, hacking off the leaves and horny rind, ate it with gusto. As he was about to prepare another, he thought of Jan and called him. There was no reply. "Jan!" he shouted again, with all the power of his huge lungs. Lungs! But not so much as an echo answered him. Chigma, evidently understanding what was wrong,
A pound to stop!
Stop.
We've got a pound to stop.
150 to carry on over there.
Okay, the carry on to have it by 50p.
Stop.
Another pound to stop. So the stops will have 50p to carry on. Alright.
To carry on.
How much to carry on?
£3 to carry on.
£3.
Yeah. Nick? Where to stop?
Yeah, I know.
I thought you were bidding another £3. Cool.
I think the carry-ons have it at the moment.
Or another pound to stop with.
Okay. The stops have it.
And another 50 to carry on.
50 to stop.
I've lost to carry on.
The carry-ons have it.
Another 30p to stop.
Oh, you need a bit more, I think.
Or another pound to stop there.
To stop, yes. That's cool.
Where are we now?
And another pound.
The stop carried at the moment.
I think the no, Richard's just put another pound in, so the carry-ons have it, I think. By 20p, yeah.
Right.
Carry on.
They followed the trail until nightfall, when darkness made further tracking impossible. Then Bono crept beneath the buttressed roots of a huge cedar tree and lay down to snatch such sleep as fighting insects would allow. The chimpanzee crept in and curled up near him. In the morning, Bono divided his pineapple with cheese.
He's not bothered with rubbish.
Bono's got a pineapple fetish. Towards noon, they found a clump of wild bananas.
They were bloody furious as well.
And both ate their fill. Then Bono shouldered half of a good-sized bunch to take along. Thus they travelled day by day, Asian man and African ape, both actuated by the same desire to rescue the son of a North American millionaire from the savages of the South American jungle.
Sorry. It's got a drawing in it as well.
It's a trilogy, but it doesn't go along.
Near the end of the fifth day, when the man and ape had eaten their evening
It's
meal,
got a bloody crocodile.
Brazil milk.
Crikey! Isn't she a beauty?
Well, they are in South America.
We can't find it in the book about crocodiles, but there's one in the jungle. And night had fallen. The hollow booming of a kettle drum came to their ears across the jungle.
Is that the drum?
Yeah, apparently.
The rest of the orchestra's really hard.
Whistle and make it hear as
No,
well.
they just...
Chipmunk paid no attention to the sound, but when Bono suddenly got up and stole away in the direction of the noise, she followed. He pushed his way through the jungle as rapidly as possible. Soon he could hear the whoops and yells of dancers and the slapping of their bare feet on the packed ground. Now you see, it suddenly went really quiet when I got to the slapping of bare feet.
50p to stop.
You don't want to know about the slapping of bare feet.
I've got a new body.
You've got a new body.
We have 50p to stop.
Another pound to stop. Another pound to carry on.
Another pound to start.
Only hear more about
The stops have it at the moment. 50p, I think.
only 50 in that case to carry on.
Another pound to start. Pound to carry on.
Carry on, Savage.
A masochist.
Another quid to stop.
Actually,
75p stop.
I think the stops have about £1.25 or something.
Oh, no, 30 to stop them.
Okay, sorry, Robin. Money to stop. Oh.
Got a bit of a crux in it yet.
No, I've got one in here.
Mostly time.
I've got a picture and everything of the
Anybody
crocodile in
else?
mine.
Blimey.
Are we on the stop?
Yes, I've already collected the money. We're definitely on the stop.
This one's a William F. Temple book, and it's a green dragon.
What a red cover.
It's
Those people remember those.
for older boys and girls, so I think we're all right. I just misread the title. I thought it said Martian Madness on Venus. I'm like, Martian on Venus? Yeah, no, there's been a book of that name, you know, then, yeah, exactly. But it's actually Martin Madness, so my eyes are crossing. This is chapter 4, Venus Revisited. Please don't stop to look at the description of the museums. Please. It's only 4 paragraphs in. Each paragraph's a page, but never mind. The first Archimedes had been a big ship. Her successor was far bigger. From her exterior size, one might have judged even a family of Titans would have found her roomy. Actually, she was 9/10 nothing but a water tank. She had been designed and built at record speed. Indeed, the draftsmen were shaping her with quick, chisel-edged pencils within hours of the original Archimedes beginning the return journey from the planet on which she had failed to land. Archimedes could have landed on Venus, but only at the cost of using up her last few tons of water propellant. She'd been built in the hope that there was water on the planet, and she could refill her tanks there to take off again for Earth. And in fact, there was water on Venus, but only, so far as had been discovered, in the form of one small lake. Therein dwelt the Venusians, large jellyfish of an indeterminate kind, quite transparent underwater except for a single tiny eye. Sounds like frog spawn to me, but never mind. As they had never been out of the water, and almost certainly couldn't live or move out of that element, they had never really been seen at all. But they had been felt. They had enormous strength and a respectable technical ability for frog spawn. For somehow or other, the way was still a mystery, they had built at least one spaceship, in which one of their kind had voyaged to Earth, kidnapped Cliff's brother Kenneth,
Kidnapped by a bloody jellyfish.
and taken him back to Venus. Magnus and Cliff had followed in Archimedes with Beckworth, Bruce and George. This is a follow-up. This is to the first one, I think.
Got that as well. Actually got another one in the series.
Oh, great. It's a Greek dragon as well.
I'm not sure.
Playing safe, Bruce put Archimedes in orbit around Venus and sent Magnus and Cliff down in a small scout rocket to reconnoitre the lake and report whether it would be all right for the larger ship to land. They rescued Kenneth Page, but barely escaped with their lives from the Venusians, who started...
It's not bad, is it?
It's got bad. Bad line.
Carry on.
Bloody crocodile.
She started a gas attack from the lake. I'm looking for this word to get it.
It must be all those bananas and pineapples.
Blame the wild pineapples.
Apparently, don't read that again.
In a calm voice.
Okay, right, without actually cracking up this time. Oh. Still being filmed, this is so embarrassing. They rescued Kenneth Page, but barely escaped with their lives from the Venusians, who started a gas attack from the lake. Yay! So Archimedes had to return with only part of its mission fulfilled, and of all Venus, only a limited area around the lake had been explored. However, Magnus and Cliff found breathable air there, and also plant-bearing soil. And although there was a perpetual mist because the clouds reached everywhere to the ground, and the light was dull and the aspect gloomy, there seemed good chances of a human colony being able to settle there, provided a reasonable water supply was available. In case it was not, Archimedes too carried enough water to make a round trip in time.
Yeah, so the page 152 out of 157.
It's called suspense.
Oh, bollocks.
Stupid hand.
50p for more jolly jellyfish, James.
Try to find more jellyfish. Well, as on the previous trip, Cliff studied hard to pass examinations in spaceship navigation.
Do you mean Cliff Notes?
Anybody know the way to be?
Yeah, you're actually on the journey.